Welcome, everybody. I'm happy to be here. It's been a little bit. Welcome to episode 18 of Living with Hep B. I'm Executive Director Richard So with Hep B Free. We do hepatitis B advocacy and liver cancer prevention around the Bay Area and are expanding to do some work nationally. Today, I'm really excited. I have my friend here, Joe, who is joining us to talk about his journey around hepatitis B. So, Joe, if you could introduce yourself a little bit and tell us a little bit about you, that would be great.
Hi, well, thank you for inviting me to do this interview. I am a strong supporter of education around hepatitis B. Um, let's see, I live in Santa Rosa. I love living here, a small city close to the ocean, with easy access to open space and nature. I like to get on my bicycle, and while I live in sort of the flat, boring suburbs, I can be out of town in 15 minutes, going through vineyards and onto the woods. I'm an amateur naturalist. I like to call myself a citizen scientist because I've been observing nature and I post on iNaturalist.
Oh, cool.
Um, yeah, and that's an organization founded in Marin County that is worldwide with hundreds of thousands of people from 5-year-old kids on up to retired scientists, all of them observing wildlife. And it's quite a joy for me. And, I'm not only doing that, but I'm getting exercise, either hiking or bicycling. Um, and I'm a retired landscaper. And for the first time in a very long time, I have time for my own garden. And that brings me a lot of joy and solace, actually, because uh, things are tough in the world right now, in my opinion. I mean, very tough and scary. Um, and I go out in my garden or walk the creek, and it really is healing um, and calming. So yeah, and I am involved in politics on a not I'm not involved in any party or anything actually, but I am really speaking out about protecting democracy and
Mm,
also protecting scientific research.
right.
I haven't been able to get a hold of my old doctors at the NIH, the
Mm,
National Institute of Health, and I don't even know if they work there anymore, having that agency having been defunded so drastically. Um, yeah, I grew up in Sacramento on the American River, and I'm a California kid all the way around, but I have been to around 32 countries, and 2 whole years of my adult life I traveled as a backpacker
cool.
and had incredible adventures. Um, and now I'm 73, and I'm not going to be doing that anymore. But I have all those memories. Um,
hmm
yeah, so enough
Great.
about that. What else do you want to know?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a fun life with nature. You talked about the iNaturalist. I was just listening to NPR and they were talking about how citizen scientists are helping like formal researchers and just that other citizens can learn so much and be a part of that process. But I think you have such a full life. I hate to interrupt it, but I have to ask how Hep B entered into all of this, and I think you also happen to be co-infected with hepatitis D, which we haven't talked about on this series yet. And so if you could enlighten us a little bit, that would be awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I contracted hepatitis B in about 1978. It was a very mild case. In fact, I didn't know I had it
Mm,
until a friend said that I looked kind of yellow, and
mm,
he had had hepatitis B, and he said, "You should go get tested." And I was positive for it, but it was such a mild case that I was going to school and I was working, and it was so mild, I didn't miss any work or school and wouldn't
mm,
have known I had it at all. Um, what I didn't know, no one really told me very much about it back then. And, the symptoms went away and everything was fine. But what I didn't realize until much later was that I had chronic hepatitis B. I didn't
mm.
know there was such a thing. And
Yeah.
um, and then in during the beginning of the AIDS epidemic, I was quite worried about AIDS, HIV/AIDS, and I started doing research myself. And back then, that meant going to my local hospital library,
Mm,
because there wasn't, I didn't have, I don't even know if we had the internet or not much. I didn't have a computer, and the regular library was not very useful. And I remember printing out reams of that computer paper. I mean, I had this stack of stuff,
wow.
and I think uh, I took personal measures to protect myself. Um, Back in the 70s when I got hepatitis B, I was a sexually active young gay man, and I had other minor things,
Hmm.
sexually transmitted, and I really was tired of all of that. And
Yeah.
while everything was well treated, I just got really tired of having to deal with all this stuff, and
Right.
and reading about some of these STDs, sexually transmitted diseases. It's like, oh my God. Um, so I I think I saved myself from HIV, unlike a lot of people I knew.
Mm,
But I already had hepatitis B. I wasn't too worried about it because, like I say, I didn't know it was chronic and I had no symptoms. In
mm,
1998 or so, Kaiser, I was a member of Kaiser, and they said you really should get your liver checked out. And
mm,
so I had I believe, my first ever visit with a gastroenterologist, and they tested me, decided to do a biopsy, and in that process, my doctor, who was helping researchers at UC Davis, told me that I had hepatitis delta, HDV.
mm,
And I don't remember very well my reaction. I didn't
mm,
have any symptoms. I didn't feel ill at all. And I don't think I worried that much about it. And I really didn't get that much instruction or education about what could happen down the road. My doctor did ask for if I could donate my biopsy to the researchers, and then I never heard any more. And in about 2003, my Kaiser gastroenterologist said that um, I should probably um, go on hepatitis B medications. But I asked to see a specialist, and because that's when I first heard that my liver was inflamed. And
Mm,
that was that, then I finally was concerned.
right.
By the way, I did finally understand that I had a communicable disease, hepatitis
Mm,
B, and the precautions I had taken around HIV were good in that one thing I really, really didn't ever want to do was infect someone else.
right.
And so my whole way of being sexual was very cautious.
Yeah.
And that was good for me, really, and it
Hmm.
was good for the people around me. And not just, I mean, I was also very cautious about just ordinary sanitation.
Yeah.
Uh, I have a whole bunch of little nieces and nephews,
Hmm.
and I knew that it was just a matter of, I didn't share my utensils, my drinking glasses. I washed my hands. It wasn't anything extraordinary, but
Hmm.
I learned that that was enough. Um, and
And Joe, sorry if I could jump in here, a
please,
couple interesting questions and to educate folks who are listening. So, as we've said on this show before, hepatitis B and hepatitis D in that sense are transmitted through blood and sex, and especially in the East Asian community, it's almost always mother to child. But as Joe is talking to us here, it is also transmitted through sex. And for those listening about HDV, it's a really interesting virus because you must have hepatitis B, HBV, to have HDV. You cannot get HDV by itself. So when Joe says his doctor discovered that he had HDV later, it must have come from an original infection of HBV. So just teaching folks who are listening, and also I wanted to ask, so I think the important thing to highlight here is, as Joe was saying, he really maybe looked a little bit yellow, maybe was a little tired, but really didn't feel any major symptoms that could also be like, oh, someone who's staying out late or working really long hours. And I think you said that it probably got better and you turned less yellow and you were like, oh, like I'm better now. And you didn't realize that it was chronically staying with you. And again, for those who are listening, you can get two versions of hepatitis B. There's what's called acute hepatitis B and chronic hepatitis B. And this is particularly pertinent to Joe because the way the disease works is, as an adult, as you get older, when you encounter HBV, whether that is through blood or sex, there's a lower chance of keeping the disease for a longer time, which is the chronic version. And so when folks encounter it at sexual age, there is less chance that it becomes chronic. But I think Joe was one of those unlucky few that it became chronic. And so it switches from the short term version, which many adults can kind of fight off and then have some immunity to, and those who transition to a long form of hepatitis B, which does cause much more serious liver problems, which Joe is talking about now. And Joe, the other question I wanted to ask is, what was this time difference between your first knowledge of infection and when this Kaiser doc was seeing you?
it was right about 20 years.
Wow, 20, so 20 years difference between that first time. And yeah,
So I
so
don't know.
mhm.
I don't know. I kind of I can't say for sure, but I don't think I caught hepatitis delta at the same time as the hepatitis
Okay,
B. Of course,
okay.
I think science didn't really know about hepatitis delta. I
Mm-hmm.
think the first knowledge of it was probably in the late 70s. But, you
Mm,
know,
that's right.
even today, I meet people in the medical field who I mean, mostly not doctors,
Mm-hmm.
but even today, I meet people who've never heard of hepatitis delta in the medical field.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
even among doctors, when I first, I've had several gastroenterologists, and um, more than one of them has said, I've never had a hepatitis delta patient.
Yeah.
Um, and I want to add that hepatitis delta, uh, if I have this right, you can correct me, but it basically
Mm-hmm.
infects the hepatitis B virus.
Mm-hmm.
Hepatitis delta doesn't have complete DNA and cannot replicate without being in the Hep B virus. It's a very
Correct. Yep.
odd, unique thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, shall I continue with my history, or do you want to go on to something else?
No, sure. So I guess the final thing I wanted to note to folks listening is, unfortunately, hepatitis delta, and we're discovering this much more, and why it's gotten attention is that it is much more dangerous than hepatitis B. I'm looking at here at some notes, and looks like chronic hepatitis delta often leads to cirrhosis in up to 80% of cases, which is much more deadly than hepatitis B. And for those listening, cirrhosis means scarring of the liver, but you can kind of just think of it as liver damage that often is the precursor to cancer. And so uh, this is like a very dangerous form of hepatitis B, kind of is the way to think of it. And so, Joe, I'll let you take it from here when your doctors were talking to you about it.
Okay, well, um, I still, even in 2003, when I first saw, um, a specialist at UCSF in San Francisco, he kind of, I was very upset. I was crying.
Yeah.
Um, and he tried to be reassuring. Um, and I went on anti-hepatitis B medications, which have been really, really effective. They're not a cure,
Hmm.
but they kept the virus down. But and interestingly, hepatitis delta keeps the B virus down, as
Mm.
far as I know. And so, what was controlling my hepatitis B? I don't know if we really know, but I continued to have no outward, uh, uh,
Symptoms.
bad effects. I didn't feel unwell. And that's the thing with the liver. You can have cirrhosis and damage and not have a clue. In fact, I had a dear, dear friend in San Francisco who had HIV, and he was on the new miracle drugs, and he recovered, and he had a brilliant life. He was a brilliant, sweet guy, but his doctors never thought to check him for hepatitis B.
Mm.
By the time they figured it out, well, his liver was so badly damaged that he died. And
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say is that if you can have hepatitis B and even the co-infection of hepatitis delta, and your liver ticks along merrily and does everything it's supposed to do until you're left with about a third of a liver, and
Yeah.
then things crash. And
Yeah.
so before I get forget to say it, maybe this is something for the end, but I'm going to say it now. Well, number one, I tell everyone I talk to get tested for hepatitis B. The sooner, the better. It doesn't matter, um, if you feel healthy or not. Um, get tested, and then if you're positive for B, absolutely get tested for hepatitis delta.
Yeah.
I tell everyone that. And, we're still working on that being an automatic thing, that
Yeah.
second. The sooner the better. Um, but in my case, my doctors, we all just kind of forgot about the hepatitis delta.
Wow.
And I was on the hepatitis B meds since
Mm-hmm.
2003. And then in 2013, uh, the medications were losing their effectiveness because
Mm.
most likely the virus, um, adapted to the medication. And I was getting tested like twice a year, all the liver tests. And my doctor said we need to switch meds. Uh,
Mm.
I was still doing my own research, not fanatically, but I looked up the medications and my doctor had made a mistake. Because of the meds I had been on, the med he was prescribing me, I shouldn't go on. I should go on a different one. Um,
Mm.
and I can't give you all the names right now. But
Right.
I just politely said, don't you think it's time I see the specialist again? And I did. And um, I had a nice interview with her at UCSF. And I said, well, we haven't talked about hepatitis delta. And it didn't even show in my records.
Wow.
And she didn't believe me when I said I had it. So I had to get tested again. And she emailed me and said, yes, you have hepatitis delta. Well, I already knew that.
Yeah.
And she said, it was a pretty blunt message.
Mm.
There's no treatment for it. And that was
Yeah.
it. And and then it was such a, I don't know, awful message and an awful
Yeah.
piece of news that I went into a little bit of denial and I just didn't deal with it. And then
Yeah.
one day I went, oh my God, I don't want to wait 20 years for something to come along for hepatitis delta.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if I'll make it that long.
Yeah.
So I got on that was a month after her email, and I got on the internet and I found the only clinical trial I believe, in North and South America. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
that was at the National Institutes of Health in Washington, D.C. And I emailed the doctor, the lead doctor, Dr. Christopher Coe, and he responded right away. And I wound up going to DC to get the full battery of testing and interviewing
Mm-hmm.
to see if I was a fit for their study for drugs to deal with hepatitis delta.
Mm-hmm.
And that started 6 years of going to the NIH for 3 phases of the clinical trial. Um, and so there it was challenging. I made over 70 round trips in 6 years. The NIH paid for most of my expenses, but not all. So it was expensive for me. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it was also a loss of work. Most of my
Yeah.
visits were, uh, you know, like fly there, do a bunch of stuff the next morning, and fly home, which was
Mm.
not the way I was used to traveling.
Right.
It
Right. Not
was,
not
and
fun travel.
no, it was, if I was feeling ill, that was really hard, those trips. But some of the trips were, especially at the beginning and the end of each phase, I'd be there for a week at a time. And actually, I took full advantage of it. And did a lot of exploring in DC and all around. But and I was a model patient. I mean, I wanted to do everything the way I was supposed to, which included taking my medications on time. I
Hmm.
often had to keep a journal, and I had to keep in close communication with my doctors and nurses. And at one point, I realized that I was key to the research, not just
Mm.
as a guinea pig, but I was doing the things scientists do. I was keeping record and I was monitoring things and I understood the plan or as it's called, the protocol. And I I really, as someone who never finished college because I had wanted to be a scientist,
Mm.
um, I was doing science, and that was a wonderful thing, and that helped me um, in the tough times because there were side effects to the medications,
Mm.
and in fact, one of them was in the third phase of the trial included interferon, um,
Mm.
and in that last phase in December of 2018, I became, according to my doctor, the first patient to ever have the hepatitis delta become undetectable.
Wow.
Yeah. But then within about 3 weeks, my reaction to the interferon was so bad that I had to go off all the drugs.
Mm. Hmm.
Um, this is, I know this is not encouraging to people, but we're in 2026. There's now one drug in use, um, um, Hepcludex. I forget. There's a lot of names for it. Um, I don't know if the FDA has approved it in this country yet, but there are people in this country getting the drug in either alone or with interferon. And so there's a lot of hope, but it really makes a difference if if you get tested for B and D sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. For folks listening, there is one treatment available in Europe right now for Hep D. And I think it is not uh, approved by the FDA this year, although word on the street, so to say, is that it should be approved or at least looked at for approval sometime this year. And so there is hope, and a lot of work has been done on is being done on hepatitis D. So hopefully there are better treatments. Interferon, the what Joe has mentioned, has been a part of a treatment for hepatitis for a long time, but has terrible side effects. And originally for Hep B, there was an interferon stage that was terrible, and it wasn't until the antiretrovirals that are so commonly or that is the common first choice for hepatitis B now that the treatment for those who have hepatitis B to remain healthy became much more effective and much more tolerable. And so that is good news. So we're all hoping that the new development in hepatitis D will reach kind of that stage, but we're still in the kind of development, and nothing has been approved officially in the US yet. So you're exactly right, Joe. Um, so I wanted to ask, like, so you were on these trials. What was the next experience you had? And during these trials, before the side effects of the trial drugs, you still relatively felt healthy, or were you finally starting to feel a little bit sicker?
Um, I, separate from my reaction to the medications, which, by the way, were mostly dealt with other medications that helped with nausea
Mm.
uh, and things like that. Um, in between the trials, I still did not feel ill, and
Mm.
this is, decades after uh, both
Diagnosis.
viruses. And again, that's the liver is like magic.
Yeah.
I mean, it does so many important things, so many things, and the fact that it can keep functioning, um, you know, um, and I did have some cirrhosis or early stage cirrhosis, um, but yeah, I didn't feel, I really didn't. While my blood tests and sonograms and CAT scans, they were all showing problems. And by the way, I started getting tested monthly, blood tests monthly, even, and those continued after my drug trials. I didn't feel anything until 2022, and
Mm.
then things really started to affect me. Um, and that was a tough summer because try as I might, I wound up getting COVID.
Mm.
I got RSV, which I had never heard of. But right around the same time, I had because my liver was starting to was sort of at its limit. I was getting fluid all over from my abdomen down to my legs.
Mm.
That in itself was causing problems, including the pressure from all that fluid caused damage in my throat, and I had
Mm.
what they call ascites, right?
Mm.
And that's where you get lesions in your throat from the high pressure. So right about the same time I had COVID and RSV, I had bleeding lesions in my throat and had to get that taken care of. And it was an outpatient procedure. Um, the fluid was causing me problems in other ways. I wound up with hernias, like two or three. Um, yeah, so, but that, I kept waiting because I'd seen, like my friend. And by the way, sadly, I had a relative who died of cirrhosis. That was due to alcohol. But I had
Mm.
seen what happens to people, and I was like, anticipating this horrible suffering. And I felt that my suffering actually wasn't as bad as what I saw for
Mm.
the people. But then, by yeah, in late 2022, I started feeling the effects, and then um, they were my doctors actually would. I went in a couple times to have fluid removed,
Mhm.
an outpatient thing where they, basically stick a needle in you and withdraw excess fluid. And, it's not really something anyone wants to do. There's risk of infection and
Right.
um, but the then it got so bad that when I finally had a crisis, um, and it's a complicated thing. I won't get into all of it, but when I went into the hospital, I had 55 pounds of fluid, that didn't belong in my body.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And at the same time, it turned out I was allergic to statins. And
Mm.
3 years on a statin, my muscles were being destroyed. And so I was still working as a landscaper. And one day I was so tired I had to quit and go home. And I could not lift my leg into my truck. I had to grab my pants and swing my leg to get into
Wow.
the truck. and I stopped working and I started falling down and I couldn't get up by myself.
Mm,
And finally, I went into the hospital and wound up at UCSF. I was trying to get on a liver transplant list because I knew my liver was in a really bad way. And um, that can be a really hard thing to do,
mhm,
especially in a state like California where so many people are in need of transplants. And you have to be really, really sick to get on a transplant list, whether it's kidneys or livers or whatever. Um, Kaiser finally agreed to send me to the Mayo Clinic in Arizona, but that would have been very challenging to be 1,000 miles from home, and I would have been required to have a family or friend with me the whole time, and I could have been there months.
mm,
But then with the crisis, I got sent to UCSF, and by some, I don't know how, why, what, but the 2 week approval process was condensed into 4 days. And on day 5, they said they had a liver for me, which is
wow.
kind of unheard of. People
Yeah.
people wait years for
Yeah.
a liver. Um, then they prepped me, and then they came out and they said, "No, we don't want to give you this liver. It's no good for you." I
Oh,
went up to my room. This is now midnight, and Dr. Roberts came in at midnight and said, "There's another liver." And in the morning, I woke up with a new liver.
wow. Wow. Incredible.
Yeah, so I don't know if these were all details you wanted. I mean, I think maybe the end
No, it's
message
important.
here is, be healthy, be safe, and do your research, get tested. Um, I, I I really recommend to people that they do their own research, or if
Hmm.
they can't do it, that they have friends or family who can, because the more you know, the better you're prepared when you have to talk to the doctors. There
Yeah.
have been times when I have known more than my doctor, which is, not the way you want it, but especially with hepatitis delta, it's still kind of a new thing. And
Hmm.
at the very least, you can ask educated questions. Uh,
Hmm.
and and of course, part of my, what I tell people is to go to reputable sources, um, like the Hepatitis B Foundation is an
Hmm.
excellent place to learn both about hepatitis B and hepatitis delta. Your organization, I'm sure, has good information. The Mayo Clinic,
Yeah.
the Cleveland Clinic, the NIH. The NIH tends to be a little more technical,
Yeah.
but I used all those sources and the medical dictionary
Yeah.
that I had on hand.
I think one of the things Joe is really highlighting, and what we say to patients too, is specifically around hepatitis B and D, being your own advocate and looking up. I will totally see. There's always this idea where doctors are like every patient looks up their thing on WebMD and then they think they're dying from everything. And sure, like I think, to be fair, I think physicians have some backing to say like patients are going to panic about everything. But on the other hand, it's better to be, in a sense, safe than sorry and mention some of those things to your physician. And, it's the job of the physician to go, yes, well, I don't think you have lupus. It's not like an episode of House every time. But oh, probably with Joe, like, oh, are you saying that there's this hepatitis D thing that's more dangerous. And, when it is a rarer disease, a lot of physicians, you're right, Joe, won't know the specifics. And so, on top of what I'll add to Joe's talk about like doing the research yourself and finding experts, it is really, even our physician experts say, try to find a physician who is knowledgeable or an expert on hepatitis B. And so, when Joe said to his primary care doctor, hey, I think it's time to see a specialist again. There are some places where primary care doctors have become hepatitis B champions, but that's more rare. I mean, they might be here in the Bay Area because of a lot of Asian patients, but we really recommend you try and be your own advocate, talking to a primary care doctor saying, hey, I really think I need to speak to someone who it might be, with all due respect, a little more knowledgeable in Hep B and Hep D. I
Yeah.
did want to Sorry, continue.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. I don't want to sound like I'm down on doctors. Um, and you know, I I didn't go to medical school.
Hmm.
I did well in biology in high school, but I forgot it all, and so it's. But I think I want to say to patients and their families and friends, not don't be afraid to ask difficult
Yeah.
questions. Don't
Hmm.
be afraid to, don't worry about sounding stupid. Um, and be respectful, but be pushy.
Yeah.
Uh,
Agreed.
but
Agreed.
always be respectful. Um, but I think we have a right to ask questions, and
Absolutely.
if our doc and if our doctors are one good quality is when a
Yeah.
doctor says, "I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Let's
Absolutely.
let's look elsewhere."
Yeah.
Um, so
One thing, Joe, I haven't covered is the reaction of friends and families when you were first diagnosed and through the process. So I'm curious, was it a lot of, was there stigma? Was there like fear or a lot of just unknown? If you could talk a little bit about that.
um, I don't feel I experienced a lot of stigma.
Mm,
I was I had maybe self-stigma.
hmm.
Uh, I didn't want to tell people, um, because I had my own like around HIV, especially in the early days. I was so afraid, and I avoided people, um, and I even avoided making friends with people with HIV because
Mm,
of the idea. I mean, I had already lost people I cared about.
mm,
And so here I was on the other side of it, someone with a
yeah.
serious communicable illness, and I was afraid to tell people. But in the end, my gay community, I got no stigma from them, and even my family. Now, in my case, I had more concerns around coming out as a gay man, and in fact,
Mm,
there was some pretty bad reactions when I came out to my family. Um,
mm,
they all got over that, and we all worked it out. And even the most homophobic relatives wanted to be at my wedding with my husband
mm,
eventually. But um, but it, you know, no, I didn't feel any stigma um, around hepatitis B and D, and uh, you know, 15 years ago, I started talking about it publicly, first in my with my group of friends,
mm,
because I didn't want people to needlessly go through what I'd gone through.
yeah.
And and
Absolutely.
so I started, it's like one thing I can do is talk about it and educate people. And they didn't, now people didn't always like hearing about yet another infectious disease and
Hmm.
about safe sex, there was a lot of resentment around that. But damn it, I felt I had a responsibility. I didn't want to lose any more friends to anything.
Yeah.
And there are ways to live a happy, decent life and as an adult and be safe. It's maybe a little
Hmm.
harder work but in the end, it's better to be safe than to go through what you might go through otherwise.
Hmm.
Winding up with a liver transplant. You know, believe me, it's not worth uh, whatever you did when you were young.
Yeah.
It's just not worth it.
So I think that's a good segue into the next question, which is, obviously there was this phase of, wow, I supposedly have these two very scary diseases, but I'm not feeling anything, to a significant decrease in quality of life, followed by this, terrifying prospect of not getting a liver on time and then being fortunate enough to get that. And so now, after all of that, I'd love to ask how, for you, how hepatitis B and D affect your daily life, if it does at all. Like, I think folks listening will be like, wow, Joe went through all of this. What's it like now?
Well, one huge thing is that with a new liver, I no longer have hepatitis delta.
Mm.
I don't recommend that as a way to get rid of the virus.
Yeah.
Um, and the hepatitis B, we don't have an actual cure that I know of.
Right.
All we have are drugs. They're very good drugs that keep the
Hmm.
virus down. And
Hmm.
so I'm on those for life unless a cure comes along.
Yeah.
Um, but my hepatitis B is undetectable.
Hmm.
Um, it's with a virus like hepatitis B where you you can't say it's gone. You
Yeah.
can only say it's undetectable. But that's
Hmm.
a very, very low amount.
Yeah, it's huge.
And so um, I'm incredibly grateful, and I feel very, very lucky between having a new liver and having the scarier virus gone.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have been a candidate for the new hepatitis delta drug because my liver was too far gone. I tried to
Mm.
get a compassionate use, and they
Mm.
said, no, we don't give it to
Yeah.
people who have cirrhosis. But I'm 73, and my liver is the healthiest part of my body.
Hmm.
The rest of me, I'm trying to keep healthy and active. But I have arthritis, and I need knee surgery, um, and I forget words. I'm right this week. I'm doing a trial with a CPAP machine, for apnea,
Yeah.
and because I also have some minor heart issues, and the lack of
Hmm.
oxygen is hard on your heart and your brain. And I want to be up and doing stuff into my 90s.
Yeah.
And
Going on
so
those hikes, right?
what's
Yeah.
that?
Is it
Yes,
going on those hikes?
yes.
Yeah.
I want to be, there's that black woman who was a ranger, a
Hmm.
national park ranger in the East Bay, who was still a ranger at 102, I think, and she
Something
died.
like that. I heard that too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to be like her.
Yeah.
Um, and I want to be gardening, and so
Yeah.
I'm while sometimes I have day, I got a cold right when I got the CPAP machine for my trial.
Hmm.
And it's like, oh no, but when I'm feeling down, I go outside, and as miserable as the weather has been, there's already spring flowers coming up, and I
Yeah.
turn over rocks and I look for salamanders, and I go on my weekly walk with my friends, um,
Hmm.
and you know, I went to a singing, a resistance sing-along at the Unitarian Church, and I'm not a religious
Hmm.
person. And I've decided I want to help organize sing-alongs because they're incredibly moving and joyous.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm leading a full life with adjustments for age. Um,
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's great, Joe. I think I love talking to you because you have such like a full life, and it's really a good example, especially because I think we have folks on the show that seem like, they found out they had Hep B, they did face some stigma or discrimination, but then otherwise have seemed healthy. And I think some folks are like, oh well, I want to hear from someone who had something. I mean, unfortunate happened, but Joe is a great example of somebody who found about the disease, but then maybe the healthcare system didn't really come through with them on the seriousness, then actually ended up suffering that serious complication, and through, the medical system and a little bit of luck, was able to come through, did suffer through a liver transplant, which is one of the things that many folks end up having to do if they're lucky enough to survive um, the original cirrhosis and potential cancer. But then, as Joe told you, you probably take that medication once a day and it doesn't seem to affect you. You don't have side effects
no
based
side
on that,
effects.
yeah, medication. And now, Joe's going on hikes every day. So if you're listening out there as potential new patients, really just find a doctor who will manage it with you. Make sure that doctor is knowledgeable, as Joe has stressed. And then, if you're on the medication has been safe for many, many years, and you can have a family, can have a full life, can go hiking every day, can garden every day.
I
Um,
will, can I
mhm,
add,
yeah.
when I first realized, well, back in like 2003, the hepatologist at UCSF said, "Do you drink?" And I said, "Well, hardly at all.
Hmm.
Maybe a glass of beer once a week, and every
Hmm.
once in a while I have wine, mostly
Hmm.
at holidays." And he said, "Nope, no,
Hmm.
none, zero."
Hmm.
And I took that very seriously. It had been decades since I'd even smoked marijuana. And
Hmm.
and I did really well. I mean, I didn't have symptoms for decades. And also, I did really well after my transplant. And
Hmm.
I want to stress to people to live a healthy life as much as you can
Yeah.
with your diet. And there's not any really good non-alcoholic wine, but there's really good non-alcoholic beers.
Yeah. I've
And
started drinking it too, honestly, just because it's healthier.
yeah, um, and get tested and keep up with the all of that. But living a healthy lifestyle, and I'm not a great athlete, but I think being a landscaper made a difference for me. I mean,
Right.
I wasn't great at doing exercise, but I had to exercise. So if you're into exercise, whatever it is, whether it's vigorous walking or on up to weightlifting, you know, all of that is good. Find the way and watch your diet. Those really, I think, make a difference
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
in dealing with a chronic illness.
Yeah, I agree ditto to all of that. And so, Joe, as we close this little chat out, is there anything else you want to say to folks who, are worried that they themselves might have Hep B, or maybe a family member has it and is, not taking it, or they feel is not taking it seriously? Any parting words?
Um, do take it seriously, because if you if you do have chronic hepatitis, the sooner you know about it and the sooner you're in the medical system, the better. It
Mm-hmm.
if when people try to hide it from themselves or from their loved ones, it comes out much worse.
Mm-hmm.
And because eventually you won't be able to hide it. And also, I think we have a responsibility to our loved ones, to deal with our illness, sooner rather than later. Um, so yeah, those are my final words. Get
Great.
on it.
Yeah, yeah. And so as Joe was saying, like the to be clear, the when you first get tested, which is mostly in the United States covered by health insurance, as well as Medicare and Medicaid, so that shouldn't be a barrier. You should just add it to the next time you go to your doctor. And if you do have the disease, what's amazing is the first management isn't that you have to jump onto the medication. It is the doctor will look at some of your liver numbers and say, let's have you come in twice a year instead of once for your annual physical. And they'll stay like that. And a full 50% of patients never have to go on to medication, and they just do that management. And it's important to keep doing that year after or twice a year, because the liver cancer or liver cirrhosis can suddenly speed up. Sometimes it's 5 years later, sometimes it's 20 years later. I mean, look at Joe. He didn't really start, his liver didn't take a giant downturn until much later. And then for the folks who are taking the medication, it is lifelong, as Joe has said. But most people, I think the statistic is around 80 to 90% on management. If they caught the disease early, will live full healthy lives. So for all we know, if Joe, maybe they didn't have this amazing treatment in the 70s, but if it was today and they had caught the Hep B today and he had started that medication today, he would have probably, really never had gotten to the point of liver transplant with the treatments we have today. Um, I think the two things I'll want to add from our view is that excitingly we have two events, and this is kind of related to Joe because one on May 12th we'll have the first ever California Hep B Free Summit at UCSF. It's going to be free for patients and caretakers and community members who want to attend. You can find that information on our website, which is on the screen, sfhepbfree.org. And Joe will be speaking on the patient panel for that, talking about this stuff along with three other patients, some East Asian, some older, some younger. And so that'll be exciting. And then on May 9th, 3 days before, we are being part of what's called the AAPI 5K walk/run. It'll be at Chrissy Field. You can find details on that on our website as well. And that is just to support various Asian Pacific Islander causes, and Hep B Free is lucky enough to be one of the benefactors. So if you want to get out and do a little exercise, you can walk and run it. It's on beautiful Chrissy Field in San Francisco in the morning. Check out the details on our website. And so, Joe, is there anything else before I let you go?
Well, one other thing, for people who wind up, having a positive positive diagnosis for hepatitis
Mhm.
B and or Delta, I recommend finding support groups,
Mm,
online or in person. Those have been a huge help for me. Um, so I really recommend that because sometimes, um, you do get, it really feels good to talk to other people who are going through what you're going through and maybe have more experience. Like you say, Richard, just regular folk. So yeah, that's another recommendation. And anyway, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and I really I'm grateful to the work you and your organization are doing.
Thank you. You just talked about support group. There's obviously the one called Hep B Community Online, the one that Dr. Thomas too runs. But did you find one around here in the Bay Area?
Um, I I guess my support group was through the Hepatitis B Foundation,
Yeah,
and it was yeah. And then I also found after my transplant, there was a support group at UCSF online, but then I had the good fortune to find an informal group here in Santa Rosa, which I meet with live. Um, yeah,
very
but
cool.
I got a lot. I don't know about all the programs you have at
Mm-hmm.
SF Free, but the Hep B Foundation, I did a video for them. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
how I got connected to them. Joe's story at
Mm-hmm.
hepb.org. I'm very proud of that because it's got mostly
Yeah.
my photos. And
Mm-hmm.
but through them, I met all kinds of wonderful people. In fact, several of the people that you've interviewed, uh, um, you know,
Yep.
Wendy and
Yeah.
Sue Wang
Yeah.
and others, that wonderful people. I mean, I recommend looking at your other videos.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Great. Well, thank you again for your time. And for everybody watching, thanks so much for joining us for another episode. We do have at least two more planned for this year. So keep on the lookout, like and subscribe. It is one of the few resources online that shows just hepatitis B folks living normal lives and talking about, what is important to them and what their lives have become. And so please share this with other folks. If you haven't checked out the short stories on from the Hep B Foundation. That is how we thank you to Hep B Foundation for linking us up with folks like Joe. And with that, we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.